Okay, so I thought I'll carry on with my effort to communicate some things. Um, so, so yeah, so I've only fairly recently started to understand really how spiritual development and personal development work together. So I think, and how you sort of become a more coherent energy being. So my perspective comes from someone who maybe has experienced a lot of upset situations as a child and a degree of chaos and uncontrolled pain in others and all that. So it's basically a bit of trauma. And what that's meant for me is there's been a slight imbalance in applying myself to what you need to do in life in terms of getting on with finding a role for yourself, creating creating your kind of your own environment, and then finding that very difficult due to having to confront sort of kinds of pain, and then sort of retreating into a more kind of spacey dream world type thing and not feeling able to then communicate again. I mean, after like a childhood of being basically on the receiving mode of a lot of confusion and anger and instability, in terms of other people's emotional instability, a turning point in my life was when I actually, in my sort of 13-year-old confused way, just spoke up for myself and said, I need a break from family life, and I need to actually go into foster care. And that was such a validating experience that, there is a society that would actually listen to me and say, you have a right to be upset, and I think this kind of experience, but then I had to try and sort of sort of reconcile that with my image of myself as being a kind of consistent and loving person. So I think this has been a pattern of my life in figuring out how to please people, but also how to set boundaries and assert myself. I think despite having been a bit more assertive as a teenager, I think from the backlash of that, I spent much more time in my 20s trying to please people and sticking around in situations which weren't too useful. And I think since becoming more interested in like spiritual skills, so specific spiritual skills such as healing and mediumship, I actually find it hard to deal with these experiences, because after finding somewhere like so loving and supportive, when you have these experiences to escape to, you then have to go back and deal with life again. So jumping between these two extremes can be quite difficult. So what I found really in terms of is that when you're carrying sort of pain and trauma, and maybe, from a wacky spiritual perspective, it's not always your own experiences, it's what's been passed on down the family line that hasn't been, it's what you've got inherited energetically from your parents as well. I think that's very real. Otherwise, I really don't understand. That's how I understand the situation. And the path of transmuting all of that and not escaping into the higher chakras too much has been one that I've been trying to walk. So what I've had to do is continuously go from trying to develop my connection with spirit and then going back and trying to face the problems and situations that I face in life. And I think for me, the main problem is being more assertive and very clear in how I need to communicate and not letting people off the hook. I think for me it's easier to be overly compassionate with someone rather than just confronting them and understanding that maybe they simply probably don't understand my own interests, and it's my job to inform them of this. I don't know. So in a way, so I've had to learn how to use spiritual experiences wisely, so that the energy and the reassurance I get from meeting my guides or receiving energy then goes into my day-to-day life and moves things on in that direction. And then also not to get too bogged down in day-to-day struggles and sort of forget to refresh myself with more spiritual experiences. And hopefully this kind of cycle might develop better over time. But it's important not to stagnate in either being permanently ungrounded or permanently overwhelmed with what feels like reality at the time. So I hope that makes sense. So yeah. So this requires just a lot of courage to keep facing emotional pain and mental confusion. And having a lot of faith that as you address these issues, you will understand them on a kind of physical, practical level. You'll understand the steps you need to make, and that the issues that come up aren't going to be intractable, that it's worth bringing them up. Okay.